The Barassi Line, Australia's great sporting divide. What's going on, y'all? Super excited to hop into this one today. You guys know me. You know I love sports. We got two of the major, most popular sports in Australia, rugby and footy. That's how you guys say it, right? Footy? Or should I say football? Or AFL? I think it's footy. I think you guys say footy, right? Also, I'll apologize right now if you guys see me coughing or sneezing or anything. I was really sick the last couple of days. Was not feeling good, but I'm feeling a lot better now. I just kind of lost my voice a little bit, so bear with me as we get through this one. Let's hop in and check out Life of Oz channel. Go show him some love. I'll have a link in the description below. Be sure to give him a like. All right, let's go.
Country in love with sport. Australia is a country in love with sport, but three sports in particular take up the majority of the market share across the country. Cricket is enjoyed nationwide in the summer months and is consistently popular from a grassroots level up to the national side.
Would cricket be the most popular sport? Probably. I would assume it's probably the AFL, right?
But in the winter, there is a significant divide between popular sports that not only affect the sporting landscape of Australia, but also affect Australia's culture as a whole. The Barassi Line marks the geographical divide between Australia's two popular winter sports, Australian rules football and the AFL, and rugby league and the NRL. The Barassi Line is a term first used by Ian Turner, an historian who coined the phrase in his 1978 Ron Barassi Memorial Lecture. It's worth noting that the lecture was named after Ron Barassi Sr., but the Barassi Line is named after Ron Barassi Jr., one of the greatest players to ever play the game of Aussie rules football. The line roughly follows Queensland's western border, cutting through New South Wales and the Australian capital.
Is this pretty accurate? Let me know if this is fairly accurate.
Territory before finishing at Cape Howe on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. On the left or the western side of this line lies Aussie rules heartland, and on the right or eastern side of the line lies loyal rugby league territory. The line got its name from Ron Barassi Jr., who always dreamed of Australian rules football going nationwide and growing fan bases in the depths of New South Wales and Queensland, where rugby reigned supreme. Interestingly, at the time, Barassi was mocked for these dreams and ideals. So what caused this great divide?
You know what's so funny? I was just, I was down in Nashville a couple of days ago while I was extremely sick. And we had the news on in the hotel room, and we have rugby coming to Nashville. I think it's happening next weekend. We have like some rugby match. I might go check it out. I don't know. I have my own son's football game to go to, but if it's, maybe the time is different, I might be able to make it.
Between rugby and
Love
Aussie
rugby.
rules fans. To keep it really simple, Aussie rules was a sport invented in Melbourne in 1859. Rugby was a sport that had been played in Australia since the 1860s in rugby union form and the early 1900s in rugby league form. Rugby's popularity in Australia began in New South Wales around the time it was starting to be played regularly across the country, not long after the first games of Aussie rules football were being played. Why am I telling you all this history? Well, it's important to give context to the intense rivalry that has long existed between New South Wales and Victoria, and more specifically, the bitter but banterous rivalry between the cities of Melbourne and Sydney. The rivalry has always been petty and divisive, so much so that Aussie folklore suggests that one of the reasons the capital was moved from Melbourne was because Sydney couldn't stand it being there, so the mutual city of Canberra was decided to be the new capital. So while the game of Australian rules football grew throughout the states of Tasmania, Western Australia and South Australia, Sydney scoffed at the idea of playing a sport invented in Melbourne and argued that the British invented rugby union, eventually becoming rugby league, was the way to go. So what about Queensland? While there was much debate in the state on whether to embrace Australia's homegrown sport or join New South Wales in playing rugby, around the time both sports were becoming popular in Australia, the independent schools headmasters voted on what sport they would embrace at the grassroots level.
Guy looks like my son when he plays football. That move that he just did right there.
Headmasters voted on what sport they would embrace at the
That's so funny. I wonder if I can insert it.
Grassroots level. And rugby league beat out Aussie rules football by a single vote. Queensland embraced rugby union. Aussie rules was put on the back foot in the state, and the rest is kind of history. The interesting part of Australia and the Barassi Line to talk about is the Australian Capital Territory. In the ACT, Aussie rules football was the more popular sport for a long time. The city of Canberra has even bid multiple times for an AFL team to enter the premier competition since the 1980s, but each bid has been rejected. This left an open space for the New South Wales Rugby Football League to bring a Canberra-based team in. The Canberra Raiders was born, and Canberra has been a rugby territory ever since. However, AFL still proves popular there today. The cultural differences on either side of the line is stark when it comes to talking about sport. If you were to ask a fan on the Aussie rules side of the line, they could probably name a large majority of the players in the AFL competition, but probably couldn't name 5 NRL players, and the same goes the other way. I actually saw this personally when I went to Newcastle, which is in New South Wales, a couple of months ago. I was chatting to some locals and mentioned the sport of Aussie rules, which they claimed they hadn't heard of before, which I just found really bizarre. Whether they were taking the piss or not, I can't say, and they would have to be in the minority of people who haven't heard of Aussie rules football in Australia if it's true. But it does exemplify the differences in sporting culture and obsessions on either side of the Barassi Line. There are many other cultural differences too. Membership of your football club is a huge part of supporting your team in the AFL, whereas NRL have very little members compared to their AFL counterparts, just because that isn't an integral part of their culture. NRL games are still often played at smaller suburban grounds, so watching games on TV is...
I feel like this is everywhere, though, that rugby is played. Like, their fields, like their stadiums are much smaller.
Is a much bigger part of NRL culture compared to the massive central AFL venues that fans flock to watch their team play each week. A lot of the cultural differences come down to a combination of geographical location and the various governing bodies that have shaped both major leagues over the years. These cultural differences also affect the wider cultural differences between the two cities as well. Things like nightlife and socialising reflect the differences in the way that people from Melbourne and people from Sydney take in their sport as a whole. But how do they compare against each other? And has either sport had success venturing across the Barassi Line? Well, the AFL in 2022 had an average live attendance of 32,620 people per game.
That's pretty big.
The NRL's average of...
I think that's like better than our NHL that we have. I gotta say, I love the AFL. I love the NRL as well. The AFL, though, like, from what I've seen from it, awesome sport. I was talking to my brother about it maybe like a week ago, and I was like, hey, have you ever watched AFL? He's like, oh, yeah, his buddy, he played it back in college. He's like, I would go watch him play. He's like, it's amazing. I'm like, I know, right?
17,121.
Why it's not bigger here.
This, again, reflects the culture that AFL has around going to watch games live, and the fact that the game itself lends itself to watching it live. The membership base reflects a similar story. 1.2 million members across 18 AFL teams compared to 320,000 members across their 17 teams in the NRL.
That's a lot bigger.
But this also reflects the difference in membership culture and shouldn't be used as solid evidence. Grassroots participation reflects similar statistics, with Aussie rules having more than twice the number of junior players than rugby league across the country. But the TV ratings is where the NRL comes out on top, with 118 million viewers across the 2022 season compared to the AFL's 106 million.
That's wild. Somebody's screaming. That's pretty crazy that they have more TV ratings, yet way less members and a lot less live attendance. I guess people can just watch it on TV.
While not crucial, it is important to factor in that the NRL also contains a team from New Zealand, which does give it a larger potential pool of viewers from the sport. So both major competitions have success in different measurements of what success is to a sporting competition. But let's finally look at how both leagues have crossed into the hostile territory on the other side of the line. The AFL currently has 4 teams on the other side of the Barassi Line, while the NRL has 1 team in the AFL side. The AFL have 2 teams based in Sydney, 1 team based in Gold Coast, and 1 team based in Brisbane. The NRL's solitary venture onto the other side is the Melbourne Storm. Now, the NRL has it pretty easy. Putting a team in Melbourne was a no-brainer because while they love their homegrown sport above all else, Melbourne and Victoria is just a sport-loving place in general. and the Melbourne Storm often plays in front of decent home crowds because of this. The deep passion Victorians have for their AFL team might not be there for the Storm yet, but it has no
That's actually a really cool field.
doubt been a somewhat successful expansion for the NRL. The AFL, however, has had to compete with strong NRL heartland in a state that traditionally pushes back against anything Victorian, and a state that has bled rugby for many years. The Sydney Swans and Brisbane
I can't. I'm listening to him, but that was like a crazy play. I was not expecting him to come in there
for many years
and catch it
through. The Sydney Swans and Brisbane Lions are aided in their support due to the fact that both teams were originally based in Victoria in some form and ended up being an interstate team for various reasons. So both boast a strong Victorian fan base. They also have solid fan bases in their home cities where they often pack decent crowds in to watch games. The Sydney Swans were even shown in a recent survey as the most supported sports team in Australia, although this is likely due to NRL fans choosing the Swans as their AFL team, just if they had to have one. The GWS Giants and Gold Coast Suns, however, have rather different stories. They are the newest clubs in the league and both have small fan bases with small membership numbers, a large number of which are Victorian fans barracking for other teams that...
Yeah, not a lot of people in the stands. All right. How new are they, though? He said it's the newest teams. Are we talking like 5 years, 10 years? Is that? I would assume that that's still pretty new. It probably takes a while to get a good fan base. That's what happened with here. I hate to bring it back to American football, but our teams move around a lot, and we had the San Diego Chargers moved up to LA, and then also the Rams moved to LA. But if you go to a Rams game, there's a lot of Rams fans there because the Rams used to be in LA, so a lot of the fan base was still there, to whereas the San Diego, they weren't getting a lot of people coming to their games. What's it called? You know, same field, but just way less. Yeah, way less.
Decent success on the field, but rarely, if ever, pack out their small stadium in Western Sydney, where it is truly the centre of NRL heartland. They play a handful of home games a year at Canberra, where they do see a more packed stadium, however. The Gold Coast Suns have never had much success on field, and are pretty deplorable off field as well, with low attendance numbers for home games and no passionate fan base yet. The Gold Coast is often called the graveyard of Australian sport, as no major franchise has lasted long with success there. But if any sport can do it, it's the AFL, who pour money into the club's development regularly and identified a niche but strong love of the sport in the area, with lower league teams like the Southport Sharks, a Gold Coast-based team, seeing success on and off the field. So will either league ever see genuine success across the Barassi Line and get into enemy territory? Well, if any league is going to, it's the AFL, who continue to pour money into developing the game at grassroots level across the Barassi Line. As for the NRL, it seems like, for now, they aren't really interested in expanding into South Australia and Western Australia, as they push to play games in the USA. It appears their focus...
That's hilarious. I just said.
...is elsewhere for now. So what side of the Barassi Line do you land on? Do you support both of Australia's major winter sporting codes? Do you hate the other side of the line with an immense and irrational hatred? Or do you just love seeing sport as a whole growing throughout Australia? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.
All right, I gotta take... Wait, hold on. He's got a ton of time left. Hold on. What are we missing here?
Okay, I just wanted to start the credit sequence by giving a shout out to the YouTube channel GeoHawk.
Okay, it's shout outs and all that. Let's see what they said in the comments. The Barassi Line is one of the beautiful parts of Australian culture. Someone says it seems very likely that the next NRL team will be based in Perth and have a partnership with the North Sydney Bears to play as the Perth Bears. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I didn't even really think about Western Australia. Probably not a lot of teams over there. That's got to be a crazy flight, though, especially if you have to do an away game over there or vice versa. That's a lot of flight. It's like, isn't it like 8 hours? That's kind of wild. Someone says, I like games that you can represent for your country. I mean, Olympics? Soccer? I'm going to say soccer. I usually call it football, but there's so many footballs now. It's getting confusing. All right, we're getting out of here. That was really interesting. Feel like I have a little bit of context on the Barassi Line. It would have been weird, though, if I went to a certain area and was like, oh, we should hit an AFL game while we're here, and then on where rugby is playing. or vice versa. So, all right, thanks for the recommendation, you guys. I'm getting out of here. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.